Now, welcome to my channel once more, and in today's video I want to talk about how to select good layers for your breeding stock or for the stock that you keep on your farm for your eggs. I know many people think that just because you have hens on your farm or just because you have a selection of hens on your farm, that this actually means that you have the right stock for you to keep as layers. But that is not the case. Actually, in my past experiences as a farmer, it is one of the greatest mistakes that I have ever made. So, I realized I had a very good number of good looking hens, but what I missed out on is actually just to know how to cull them out and separate the good layers from the bad layers. When I talk about culling is the process of actually separating the good laying hens from the ones that should not be categorized as good layers, selling off the ones that are bad layers as meat and keeping the ones that are actually good layers to continue your stock. It is a very critical skill actually. Most cases, most farmers do not take, the young and upcoming farmers do not take keen notice on how to select these specific bird types and know how to differentiate the two, and it gets to cost them in terms of the feed consumption costs, because you realize that most of the hens that actually do not lay well are simply consuming into the profits that is given to you by the birds that are good layers. So as a farmer, you need to know how to select good laying stock from the bad laying stock. And this video was inspired by a video I watched the other week when Dr. Kingori was actually interviewing Caleb Karuga. And Caleb Karuga tried to hint to farmers about the good layers, how to select good layers in your stock of birds and actually differentiate them from the bad layers. So I'll show you the few tips of how to know if your hen is a good layer and how to differentiate them from the ones that are bad layers. And I hope this video gets to help a farmer out there. And if you watched it, kindly click on my link, share it to other farmers so that we may all learn and grow together. And kindly subscribe to my channel so that we may all keep learning and growing. And if you have any alternative opinions about how to know the good layers that I may not mention in this video, kindly put it up in the comment section and we may all tackle it together and also get to learn in the process. Now, like I was saying, there are specific attributes that can be given to good laying birds or good birds for your laying stock. And one of such attributes is the comb. The comb is the part of the hen that is always at the head. And the wattles. The wattles are the two, should I call them ear-like structures that are just below the hen's beak to both sides, yes. So, a good layer normally has a bright red and a well-grown comb and wattle. The reason why this is critical, in fact, most times it is the wattle and the comb that are indicative of a bird that is either sickly or is not well or is not a good layer. Some of the hens that you will have, you'll realize that they have a very short comb or a good comb, but the coloration is not bright red. And sometimes it may be indicative of an underlying issue that maybe when you get to talk to your vets can actually advise you on what is happening to the bird. And also the wattles. The wattles and the combs are normally going together when it comes to determining whether a layer is a good layer or if it's a bad one. So that is the first quality that you need to check when looking at a good laying bird, as shown in the video below. Now, just to show you what I was trying to explain is that I've got this hen. This is a selection that I have from my laying stock. This is a hen that I have from my laying stock, and it's a little scared because, you know, it's doing this actually stresses out the bird, but I hope after I've done this video I'll actually go and give it an anti-stress medication. So if you look at this hen, this part that I'm holding up, this is the hen's comb. This is the hen's comb, and as you can see, it is wide, and some people may actually think that it's a cock, but no, this is just a hen currently at 6 months old, and it's getting to its prime laying stage. And then the one below, these are now the wattles. These are the wattles that I was explaining in the previous video. So if you can look clearly, the wattle and the comb are both now besides the wattles and the comb. Another characteristic of a good layer is normally determined by the vent. Normally for good layers, the vent is always moist, and as the vent is moist during the laying process, the vent gets moist and it's kind of widened. So if you are looking to select good layers within your stock that is already laying, then it would be a good idea to actually select from one hen to the other and actually examining the vent by turning the buds either upside down or opening the fur that is around the feathers that are around the vent area, and actually getting to have a good look at the vent of the chicken. If it is moist and it is kind of wide enough to pass an egg, then it's possible that this is a good laying bird. So you do one-on-one selection or one-on-one checkup on all your laying stock and determine whether their vents are actually moist and wide enough to be able to indicate that it is actually an active layer in your laying stock. Now, it is a weird process and you'll bear with me. The hen may be a little dramatic because, if you see it giving me one slap in the face, kindly do not laugh. Ha. Yep, there it goes. So, it is weird, but I'll do it anyway. Oh, sorry. If you look at the hen and you turn it upside down, preferably to allow it to relax, and you look at the vent from under, you'll realize that the vent is actually moist. I don't know if you'll be able to see when I turn it just slightly. The vent is wide and moist. The moist nature of the vent and the wideness of the vent is actually indicative of a good layer, being that that same vent is able to pass an egg through and is able to actually allow the hen to be continuously laying. Now that is a characteristic that you have to check for your laying birds, otherwise you'll be making mistakes that you may never be able to recover from. Now the last bit of knowing how to differentiate a good laying hen from a bad laying hen, and I feel that this is the most critical one. Let me just try turning this bird upside down first so that you may see what I'm doing. By turning this bird upside down, you let it relax a bit. Normally putting a bird in a upside down position makes it a bit relaxed because it is distressed in a way. You take 2 or 3 of your fingers and feel them right bit under the vent. Just right under the vent is where the pelvic bones are. Now if you put 2 or 3 of your fingers in and you realize that they fit perfectly between these 2 pelvic bones, then you can actually tell that this is a good layer. Now 2 of my fingers fit and they still leave a space. Now I put 3 of my fingers and put them, it fits, but again in the third, by adding the third finger action, I can actually feel the pelvic bones moving slightly to the side, allowing my finger to actually slip into the space between the pelvic bones. Now, that is a very good characteristic of a good laying hen. If you ever feel your birds and you try fitting 2 or 3 of your fingers and you feel that there is no space for your fingers to go in, or there is no allowance for you to actually put in your fingers, then I would advise you to actually just eliminate that bird from your stock and sell it off at meat, because in the long run it's not giving you any profits. Instead, it's only consuming the profits that is given to you by the other birds and leaving you with nothing. The last bit of how to select good laying hens for your stock or for the continuation of your breeds that I would like to talk about is actually the management process of such hens. It is normally believable that for your laying hens you need to, most of the people keeping, for example in my case, improved indigenous kienyeji or improved kienyeji chicken, you'll realize that we like to put them on chick mash or chick pellets or chick crumbs at the start of their growth, and then when we move to the growing stage where we should actually be administering the grower's mash, we tend to try and cut costs by introducing a different feed normally made locally or through our own combinations to try and cut down on the cost of feeding. And then again later, when you're getting to the laying stage, we now shift back to a layer mash that maybe the commercial feed producers are actually selling in our localities. Yes, it might work. I'm not saying there's nothing written in stone when it comes to farming. You always have to experiment and find what works for you. But in my experience, I realized that shifting from one feed to the other is actually it injures the farmer more than it actually benefits them, because if it is a bird that is actually being kept for meat production, then I'd say it's okay, you can do any combination you want as long as you're getting your weight gains for your birds. But when this is a bird that you actually intend to be producing eggs maximally for you, then I feel that the best way is actually to simply keep them on one specific feed or on one specific company feeds all through. Because you'll realize that when you stick to one specific feeding system, the combinations of the ingredients that are actually in these feeds tend to be consistent all through. So that allows the birds to actually get to the point where they can actually lay successfully. But when you are shifting, you'll realize that if at the chick stage you used high quality feeds, and then at the growing stage you shifted to a combination that maybe you made yourself, and then again at the last bit of their development you shift back to a high quality layer mash or the commercially produced layer mashes, there is always an imbalance in the ingredients that are actually in these feeds, and now it may affect the bird in the long run. Maybe this can be better explained to you by better specialists, but from my experience I feel that it actually affects their production rates. And then another thing you will also realize is that these birds that you are intending to keep for laying, when you shift from one company to the other, especially at the laying stages, that fluctuation in ingredients will actually slow down the egg laying process. It will actually bring back your chicks to producing pullet eggs and then again restarting off their cycle, and in the long run it will just be impeding your success as a farmer. Another most important thing that you will need to consider is the management process that these birds undergo when they're growing up or when they are being brought up, because you realize that for most farmers, you are more keen towards vaccinating specific diseases. For example, the Newcastle ones or Gumboro, and from the hatcheries you may do Marex vaccinations. But the other later stages of vaccination processes are normally not complete. What you'll not realize is that actually infections get to interfere with how the birds get to lay when they are at their laying stages. So from my advice, I would advise that actually follow the vaccination schedules strictly and to the letter, and do not miss any vaccination whatsoever if you are intending to keep those birds for your laying stock. Normally you'll realize, for example, from my experience back then, I noticed sometimes that there were eggs that were produced by my hens, and in many cases you'll find that there is one specific hen that always lays an egg that is serrated. By serrated I mean it's always swollen at one point, and the other parts of the egg may look actually just okay and smooth and oval in shape, but there is one bit of the egg that is kind of swollen and forming some kind of a ring around the egg. This specific bird, later I went to a vet and asked them why this bird only lays this specific type of egg, and the vet actually advised me and told me that there are high chances that this bird was affected earlier on in its early stages of life by Newcastle or maybe Gumboro, and now into its laying stage it's actually affecting how it's laying its egg. I did not know the correlation between that, but that was what the vet advised me on. And another vet also actually told me that I need to incorporate more of phosphorus or dicalcium phosphate supplements into their feeds to help them boost their calcium the calcium percentages in their feed, so that I may be able to get well-formed eggs for the birds. Which I did, but that one bird still got to continue laying the same exact type of egg all through its laying cycle until I decided to eliminate it. So how you manage your birds as they are growing up determines how they get to lay at the mature stages, and what amount of returns these birds can actually give you. So as a young farmer, check on how you're managing your birds. Make sure they are vaccinated all through. Make sure that the feeding program is quite okay and not so intensive that they are gaining too much weight. It needs to be as per the required gram intakes for every bird every day and through the month and through their lifespan. And then at the point that these birds are getting to their laying stages, you need to actually cull out the ones that are not going to be good layers by doing exactly what I've shown you in this video, checking on their combs and wattles, checking on their vents if they are moist, and checking on the spacing between their pelvic bones to actually determine whether they can be able to allow an egg to pass through. This will save you a lot from costs that are related to feed consumption without actually getting returns in forms of eggs, and this will actually help you be a successful farmer. If you are looking to have how to actually know what amount of feeds your birds will be consuming throughout the season of their livelihood and you are trying to find a way of actually budgeting for your birds, we Barbarian Farmers Limited and me as the Ragot actually have a feed calculator that I can give to you if you reach out through my social media pages. The Ragot on Facebook, the Ragot on Instagram, the Ragot on TikTok, and the Ragot on X. All through, if you reach out, I can be able to advise you and give you an appropriate feed calculator that will actually tell you how much grams a chick, a bird, a hen, a cock will be consuming through their life entire stages, and you can actually be able to plan your feeding program for your birds with that and budget for your farm. And also, if you are in need of a vaccination schedule, we give it out freely, we share it freely on our social media pages, Barbarian Farmers on Facebook again, and the Ragot on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and any other platform that I may be on. It's simply the Ragot. So kindly reach out, subscribe to my channel to learn more, share it with other farmers so that we may all learn and grow together. And please leave me with your comments so that I may know what you think. And if I have left out anything that you feel may be beneficial to another farmer, don't be stingy with information. Information is power. Let us all provide it to those who need it, and maybe we can be able to help other farmers to grow from this. Thank you. See you next time.